Hi. Was anyone watched the keynote earlier today? I was part of that. All right, cool. Oh, wow, a lot of you. All right, wow. Okay, cool. So some context for that and for today's talk. I was given the opportunity to do that keynote like a week ago. So I kind of summarized a little bit of what we're talking about right now for that presentation, so you have a little bit more context there. But yeah, so I have a couple of questions first so I can get a feel for the audience here. But any Python developers, people who work with Python, okay, couple. People want to learn Python, okay. Any .NET developers? Okay, nice. Community, I love it. Yeah, so, okay. So I'm a .NET dev, and yeah, I really like this meme here. Wait, where'd it go? Oh, this one here, yeah. I'm one of those .NET devs that go on Twitter and like, .NET's not old, .NET's not, yeah, that's me. But I wanted to deliver a talk here, and I was told, back in August, hey, you're gonna get the opportunity to talk here, but JavaScript and Python tend to be a little bit more popular. I don't know why. .NET's great, give it a chance, check it out. Talk to the folks that are here in the middle, they seem to be .NET devs. But, embracing challenges, doing talks, doing things like that, nurturing community are really important. So I was like, yeah, let's do it, let's figure it out. So suddenly, of course, I found myself needing to learn Python. But everyone here, remember the last time you taught yourself a programming language? Was that, how many have taught themselves a language in the last, since ChatGPT and those things became a thing? Okay, a couple of people. And then everyone else is kind of like before. So you probably use like things like books or tutorials, or maybe you wanted to go back to school, or there was like, I don't know, YouTube playlist, a boot camp. There's so many options. It's great how many options now we have of learning things. I remember the last time I learned something was Bash, and I recommend this book so much. I don't have a promo code or anything like that, but it's called Linux Basic for Hackers by Occupy the Web. Fantastic book if you want to learn Bash, which I feel like is an underrated skill set. But I taught myself Bash through working through this book, and I just wrote blog posts on my blog about it. But that was, let's see, 2020. So we're talking about like 3 years ago, right? But even since then, this whole space of AI assistance or educating yourself and the tools available have changed significantly. Because now we have Copilot, we have ChatGPT, we have Bing, we have Bard, we have it's like Codex, the free VS Code one extension, thing like that. So then I had to take a step back. It's like I didn't have to figure out what the topic of the talk necessarily was. It was more so, well, how am I going to even learn these things? Because I think it might be able to compare itself to before the internet became a thing, and everyone was kind of learning with stuff that was offline. So you had books and more of your traditional methods, right? And then the internet became a thing, and everyone's trying to like figure out, how do I leverage this? I'm sure there was like an adaptation period of like, okay, how do we leverage this new tool, right? So I think we're kind of going through something similar to that. But learning how to learn is just as important as learning a new skill, because I can give you a book, and it worked great for me, and you're like, I didn't learn anything from this. You can give me a tutorial that worked great for you, and it doesn't work at all for me, and that the power of you understanding how you learn, and I think is something that we're all gonna have to go through a little bit again now, because we're people in tech, we love learning new things and leveraging new things all the time, right? So that's when I figured out, okay, that's what I wanna kind of put myself through for the next couple of weeks and discover really what it means to best leverage these tools that now exist for us. Does it mean that, I can learn things faster, more efficient, or with a deeper understanding? Will it improve the quality of my projects, my learning, all that kind of stuff, right? So yeah, then I knew I wanted to put together this talk, and so over the following weeks, I built a bunch of projects that are Python-based. Like really a lot of terrible ones, a lot of simpler ones, one of them that I'm kind of proud of. But that's essentially the context for this talk, right? And my name is Gwen, I'm a cloud advocate at Microsoft. All the source code slides, both from the keynote and from today, and any additional links you can find at ak.ms GPS-ATO, and @made by GPS is my handle on everywhere. That's a good part of having kind of a unique handle. You can get it everywhere. You can find me there, and welcome to this talk, an AI-powered journey to learning Python, all right? So first, I want to start with mistakes, how you don't want to learn with which is great, because you learn from good and bad, right? I want to set the stage with this question, like what is a developer? And also, I procrastinate a lot in VS Code, so I found out that if you do like / and you preface it with a Q, you can ask it a question, and it'll return. Sometimes it like makes no sense. Like I think I asked it like, what's the best open source conference, and it told me something like, I can't remember, was it like PyCon or something like that? It didn't tell me all things open, which clearly is wrong. But here, I'm asking like define developer, because when we think about like, well, what does it actually mean to develop code now? What does it mean to create code? It tells me developer is someone who writes code to solve a problem. And I'm like, okay, well, define what writes mean, right? It says write code means to create code using a programming language. I'm like, okay. Then I asked it, does using Copilot count? And they told me, yes, using Copilot counts. I mean, of course, it's not going to tell me anything else, right? But I was like, okay, great. That's kind of my definition. I want to become someone who can write code with Python. Then I can consider myself a Python developer. Which leads me to mistake number 1 here. Hold on, did we switch over here? Oh, here we go, okay. Relying too much on these tools. So I've attended a couple of Copilot sort of AI-based talks here, and a lot of people are talking about, well, what about juniors, and what about missing out on the learning and all these things? And I too, with relying on these tools, have found that it's it's probably the biggest mistake, that you're gonna kind of miss out on these things. So for the first project that I built, in .NET, I built this CLI tool that generates timestamps. I sometimes do like live streams or longer videos on YouTube, and I'm too lazy to go back and create timestamps for them. So I was like, hey, I could probably build something to do this for me. So I did. Works great in .NET, and I was like, okay, maybe I can just walk through the same project with ChatGPT and get it to give me the Python code. So I did, went into ChatGPT, I put in this exact prompt, and by that afternoon, I ran into a couple of configuration issues, bugs, not having the right things installed, all that kind of stuff. But by the end of that day, I was essentially had like a Python project running, and then I had written some code, and then I guess I could consider myself a Python developer according to to Copilot there. And here's a screenshot of it working. I think I have a GIF here. Yeah, of it actually providing the timestamps. But this is in Python, so you can see Python timestamper, right? I made a few videos during this journey. I should have asked. I can play, audio will come out of my laptop, right? We're good? We should? I think we should, right? Let me try playing it. I made a few, so I do YouTube videos, and I like to document my learning and build tutorials and stuff like that. So I have a snippet of a video that I made after completing this first project. So we'll see. Does this play? Oh, hold on. If not, I can just summarize it for you. It's probably I was muted here. Oh no. Do we not have audio to the, no? All right, fine. So anyway, you can watch it if you're interested, but essentially the basics of this reflection was, I had not felt any sense of struggling at all. There was no, you know how that itch that we all get when you work through something, and then you can scratch it once you're satisfied because you've worked through the bug or whatever it is? I didn't feel that whatsoever. I kind of just walked through ChatGPT, copy, paste. And a little bit of my experience with programming in other languages, I could figure out a couple of bugs, but essentially, I didn't feel satisfied. Like comparing it to the time that I built my first .NET project. This is actually my first .NET project. It was an automation that I built for an internal tool that we had. I had a really cool manager then, and he would find like just these most random tasks to help me get hands-on experience, because he knew that wasn't the job that I wanted to do. I think I was like a sysadmin. Any sysadmins here? No sysadmin. Okay, yeah, shout out you. I was a sysadmin then, but I had wanted to learn more about cloud computing, and I had a really cool boss. He was like, I'll find things for you to go do, but you're probably going to have to learn .NET, just because I was surrounded by senior engineers with experience in .NET. And I was totally like, .NET is so old, like why do I have to work with this? I wanted to learn Python, but I kind of was just like, okay, I need to lean into what I have available to me. In my team, they were all seniors. I don't know why, I was junior, there was no mid-level, and then it was all seniors for some reason. But they were all senior in .NET, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna build this. It took me 6 weeks. And now I could probably build in a couple of hours, maybe a couple of days. It took me 6 weeks. Significant amount of struggle, significant amount of like those itches being scratched. And it was very different comparing it to building like my first Python project. So that leads me to this question, which kind of outlines the first mistake is like, where's that struggle? And for people who are questioning like, oh, how is this going to be relevant for juniors, or how do I make sure juniors don't miss out on like things when it comes to using AI assistants, you need to ask yourself like, where is that struggle, and essentially don't miss out on it, because when you leverage too much of these tools, it made me realize that I'm like missing out on these things. And those moments of struggle, as we all know in everything in life, right? Those are what make us more resilient, that teach us things, because you learn from the good and the bad, right? So I like to plot my, I guess, learning framework between sort of one side I have like traditional learning, things that I use. I'm a big fan of books. I can't learn too well from videos. That's kind of just the way I work. But I like docs. I like reading things. So that's my one side. And on the other side, I have like AI assistants. So all the plug and play here kind of thing. And I was looking for that middle area, that area where it's like, I feel like I'm leveraging both, and I'm not relying too much on either side kind of thing. So after this first mistake, I was on way too much of this other side, right? Relying way too much on these tools. And I wanted to find myself closer to the middle, right? But this leads me to mistake number 2, which is not relying enough and kind of missing out, which I feel like is maybe the other spectrum of people who are like, oh, I don't need these tools. Like, these things will never replace me. AI never that. Like, I feel like those people as well, that opinion as well, will enable you to miss out, which no one wants to do, right? So you don't want to be caught kind of in either side there. So I built another tool. It's kind of like a straightforward API here. Does anyone here work with Azure? Okay, good amount of people. So it's essentially creating an API with Azure Functions, Cosmos DB, things like that. And these are services that I have a good amount of experience in, but in the context of a different language, right? Where I was like, okay, I can rely on that knowledge that I have and then just kind of build it out with Python type thing. I do have another video, but it's not going to play. So anyway, here's a comparison of my face. And like, one's the first video, and you can see I'm kind of like very existential. And then in the second video, my cat decided to join me as I was talking through my solution, and there's a little bit more of a glow to me. And I had a significant amount of moments of struggle there, but I also felt like because I had like a sour taste from my first project, I leaned all the way to the other side. So I definitely had more of those aha moments of like more of things of figuring out, but definitely was leaning significantly less on tools. I remember like turning Copilot off to an extent as well, because I was like, oh, no, I don't want, like, I was a little scarred. So then I found myself on this other side, right back. This is kind of like before these tools existed, right? Found myself, right, again, not in the middle, way too much leaning on old things, and I knew I had put myself through this journey to learn how to leverage these things, right? So those are 2 mistakes, and kind of keep in mind for yourself as you try to figure out what it is to learn something new with all these tools available. But now we can kind of dive into how to actually learn with AI. I talked about the project here that is a little bit more longer term, a little bit more something more involved, something that I want to continue evolving and practicing more skills and implementing things with, or in the keynote, which is this cloud project idea generator. The Azure certifications actually are pretty well laid out, and for those who have taken Azure certifications, I'm sure you're familiar with like the study guides, and you have like your audience profile, you have like skills, descriptions. So essentially what I did is I went through a bunch of these, and I went through a bunch of Azure services, and I kind of paired them, and I built some raw JSON here. I was going to do a demo, but I just have some screenshots. It's very similar to what we saw earlier. There's a drop down there, and then you select your certification, hit generate, and it's going to give you an idea. And my goal is, I do a lot of mentoring for people earlier in career for the cloud space specifically, and the biggest thing is like, oh, I don't know what to build, I don't know what to do, what to put on my GitHub, what to talk about, like all these things. Like I know I can study, I know I can to an extent memorize these questions and things like that, but like how do I really gain skills? Like where do these ideas come from? And that's actually something that I went through when I took my first certification. So I was like, okay, that sounds like a problem that I would like to solve. And then essentially this is what it is. Based off the description of the certification, based off the services that I've paired alongside of them, and this is all in JSON, and we'll talk about this a little bit more. It generates an idea for you. It's an API, right? And just has like a nice front end there, but you can see how it returns the JSON for you. And that's VS Code, that's Thunder client. If you don't use Thunder client in VS Code, I highly recommend it. It's great for working with APIs. And then we can walk through the architecture a little more because I have a little bit more time here. Anyone here works with Azure OpenAI? Couple people, okay. Cognitive services. Okay, it's like 2 people, all right, cool. So like I had mentioned earlier, it's essentially implementing a vector search. And what it does is it'll grab the certification that the person is interested, create a prompt, and create the vectors, the numeric representation of that data by sending it off to a model that's deployed on Azure OpenAI. And then with that data, that is compared to other data that I already have indexed, so saved already into a cognitive services search index. And then with that, we get some results, and then we get a completion, and then that's what that data is that we see, that JSON with the project information. That's what's there. I got hands-on with a significant amount of things here. I had no idea how to work like Python console apps or Azure OpenAI SDKs or the Cosmos DB SDK or the Cognitive Services SDK or anything like that in the context of Python. But we can focus a little bit more on, I guess, we talked about the vector search a little, but I can dive into it deeper. So you have like images, audio, we have like video, text, any kind of thing that would have semantic value. And then you need to transform it into embeddings, which are that vector representation, essentially saying numbers. Okay, so if this is a laptop, what is this meaning in numbers? And that's what it means to generate embeddings or to create vectors for it. There's a bunch of services out there that can do that for you. In this case, I had to leverage Azure OpenAI because it integrates very well with cognitive services. It integrates very well with other services, of course, on Azure. And then you do the same, but for whatever data you're trying to compare it to. And you can see this kind of reverse from the app UX going back here, or going into the transform into embeddings. And then the cognitive services is what performs the search. So that's what will grab both of the information and say, okay, here I found these similarities or this difference. It depends on what you're looking for as well. And then you get the results, and then with that you can do whatever it is that you want to do. In my case, I wanted to return the project information. Right? The console app, what it does is it grabs all that JSON that I've manually prepared, like research or whatever, and then whatever it is that you wanted to do, what information you wanted to sort of prepare and work on, whatever it is, you'd have to kind of put it into a format that you could then generate, whether that be audio, video, whatever it is, you can generate embeddings or that numeric representation. And Azure OpenAI can do that for you as well. And then you can save it into a database. I know there's like databases that are specific for vectors. Cosmos DB has something in preview, I believe, that allows you to do something similar. So I stored it into Cosmos DB, and then via using that as a data source, and then there's something called an indexer that will push the data. So whenever I add something to the Cosmos DB, that like a new certification, or maybe I want to branch out and add other type of information to also have it influence the project generation, the project idea generation, then I would add it there. Then I would just run this funnel. At the moment, it's all like a console app. I could probably automate it a little bit more. I could probably have like a function, like a serverless function that sits and just listens to a blob storage, which would process the information or something like that. But again, this is just things I want to continue adding on to this project. And this is what the cognitive services index looks like. So this is where all the information that I've prepared goes into. And you can see here, it kind of looks like a database schema. It's essentially describing what your data looks like. So the search has more context and stuff like, okay, this is a type of a string. This type of, that type of thing, right? So like I mentioned earlier, and now like I started this project 3 weeks ago, and I got sick right in the middle, which is that block of a couple of days that I couldn't do anything. So about 12, 13 days-ish of work. And yeah, this is what I know now, but I'm very comfortable. If anything sort of doesn't work, or I wanted to implement anything, I know kind of at any stage where I want to work with. And this is what I knew before. So you can see it was a kind of a significant amount of learning. And I know that I could not have pulled off this without things like AI assistants. And there's a bunch of things that I struggled with, a bunch of things that I learned to leverage. So I want to dive into some recommendations. So that stage where you're learning, you have docs, you have tutorials, all that kind of stuff before you dive into your project, you have templates, whatever it is. So this is my first recommendation, which is to seek a deeper understanding with the help of AI. So this is a tutorial that I used. This is linked in that initial link that I showed you, so you don't have to worry about copying this. But this essentially will teach you how to use a vector search with the services that I mentioned. And then this is what I used to sort of use as a template for my project. And the good thing about this one, it is packed with links. So pretty much what I did was I Control-clicked, opened all the tabs, and then I went through every single one of them to read what was there, and it took me a while. But this is the concept of like priming, which is essentially means to expose yourself to things before you dive too deep into them. So it's sort of like if you want to read a book or something and you kind of skim through the pages and you give yourself a little bit more of context of what's going on before diving deeper into it, that concept of priming, like we can apply here too, and it's worked very, very well for me. So kind of understanding concepts or like in this case like parameters in code before I actually dove into customizing it for myself. Highly recommend you kind of take a step to do that first. So you can see here you could leverage things like ChatGPT or Bing. Okay, I know I work at Microsoft, but Bing really is great and it's free. But you could also leverage ChatGPT to kind of like walk through some concepts. You can see here I'm asking like about the algorithm that cognitive services uses. You know, and you can continue that conversation, get to the point where you feel like you have no more doubts and you're able to explain it, but leverage those tools to get you there and to get you there quicker. And once you feel like you can explain it, then okay, move on. And yeah, just allow yourself to like really develop a deeper understanding, and because you kind of can do it in less time, in my opinion. I really like this feature too, just opening up some docs. You can see I have a bunch of tabs that are open, and then asking, let's zoom in here, asking Bing to develop a answer based off the page that you're currently on. Instead of it being a search across everything or like a general chat, it's like, oh no, this is the doc that was linked into the tutorial. I want to learn specifically from this doc, like answer this question based off that. I really like this. Works well for me. Sometimes you're going to need to like branch off and maybe have more of a general search, or maybe you go back to like general Bing Chat or ChatGPT or whatever it is to get more of a different type of explanation. And that's where you're going to need to leverage different tools, and you'll learn more of that as you work with them more. But I really like this in the context of just understanding more tutorials or things that are linked from the original project, right? So my recommendation number 2 here is kind of building on this concept of like the struggle, right? And it goes back into that first mistake where I was leveraging too much. It's like, if I allow myself to just base all my code off comments and all my code off stuff that gets generated, then I'm not gonna learn. So the best approach I would say here is try your absolute best first, like really, really like try, and then when you can't, like lean into and then asking for help. So here, for example, I'm trying to iterate over some JSON, which is a pretty fundamental and basic task when you're learning a new language, and something that I've done a lot with .NET, but it's done differently in Python. And obviously grasping the basics are pretty important, but you can see here, like, I'm running into an error at the bottom. You see here, it says, circular reference detected. And I kind of understood what that meant just based off my experience with other languages, right? But again, I'm kind of leaning into like, okay, well, I could base myself off the knowledge that I had, or I could sort of develop a deeper knowledge and understanding of this issue based off this exact code that I'm writing right now. So then I asked it, but I didn't ask it in like, hey, what's wrong here? I described my problem, saying this is what I'm trying to get to, like what's going on here, and then it developed like a solution here for me, as you can see here. So then once I fully understood, I implemented that code, and then on the right side it did everything that I needed to do, and it ran successfully down here. And then also I understood that, well, the issue was because I was wanting to update the data that I was also iterating over, right, in that circular reference issue there. Also, touching on prompt engineering, which is like this hot topic, and I know Emily spoke about it at the keynote, and I really don't think it's also like a skill set, that it's not like programming or debugging or something like that. I think it really is just byproduct of you doing more with these things and fully understanding and just being able to explain. I was talking with a colleague earlier today. It's like, I would honestly love Copilot to get to a point, or these tools in general to get to a point where it understands us without us needing to explain it. Like if it was a true pair programmer, because when you pair program with someone, they come into the situation where they understand the context of the project, and it's not just like a super powered autocomplete, which is kind of what all these AI things are right now. But maybe it'll get there. But yeah, you sort of develop your ability to create prompts and to describe what's going on just the more that you work with it, and that's pretty much it. I wouldn't say spend 2 hours every day learning prompt engineering with like this course. Like I would just say like work with your projects and developing your things as you go, and you'll get kind of a better hang out of it. But here you see I have a doc string here in this Python function. And I've learned that I get better completions in Python when I provide like the declaration of the function. So you see there it says def generate embeddings, and then the doc string, versus if I was to just provide the comments. So if I just describe this in comments, that's what I've seen. Maybe it'll change, but this is what's works best for me in Python. And it also allows me to kind of, again, verify that I know what I'm trying to get at. And I'm describing, I'm already coding, and it generates after it, right? So you can see that's actually the code that it generated for me based off the function name and the doc string there. Another thing that is great is slash commands. GitHub Copilot has slash commands, and doc is one of them. So another thing I like to do is, okay, I write out my doc string, and I've described what I wanted. But like I can also highlight, like delete my doc string, highlight it, and get it to generate one, which would be, in this case, the doc command, based off what it knows. So in this case, what it generated actually made a lot more sense to me, and like if I read it back, and if someone else read it, they would probably understand it more than the doc string that I came up with. So I kind of accepted that suggestion that it provided, and then it's kind of like, yeah, you try, and then you get another suggestion. If it's a better fit, you kind of use it. And if it doesn't work, it's not a good fit, then you don't use it, type of thing. On the flip side, there's also this question that I love asking: how can I improve this code? Because having code, and again, the context of like juniors, having code and that it runs and it works, and having really good quality code like are different things, right? And you get to that second point, the more you work, the more you have people around you that are there to help you out and stuff like that. But yeah, I like to ask this question, especially as I'm like, okay, I created this function, and I understand how it works and it's working, but like now tell me what are things that I can improve on. So you select that code, go into the chat, and you ask it. And it actually does define some things that you can work through. We'll do this one here. It's a little easier to look at. It actually does tell you like, okay, 1, 2, 3, and you can pick and choose what you want to actually do, and maybe there's things that you need to dive deeper in to fully understand in terms of like the suggestions. Oh, here it is. But the code there is also something like, oh, here's all the code with everything that I told you to. Earlier on, I tend not to just copy paste. As I'm sure as you're more senior and you're leveraging Copilot and things like that, you can just insert where cursor is, which is an option. You can just select the code and insert the code into where it would work for you. But the more, you know how they say like you shouldn't just copy paste code, you should type it out like when you're earlier. Yeah, a lot of people say that. I tend to agree, like just going through the mechanics of going through the code and typing it out, and indentations and all that kind of stuff I think is important to learn. But yeah, I really like being able to develop like the deeper understanding of the stuff. Recommendation number 3 I have is ask and annotate. This is all off the explain. So there's a couple of slash commands here. We have fix, help, simplify, tests, VS Code, and clear. I use explain, simplify significantly, and fix as well. But earlier on, you're probably going to use the explain one a lot. And this command is great. What it does is, it's kind of straightforward. Like here I have a line highlighted, it's number 86, and then I asked it to explain it to me. And then you can see it's provided a definition for me, which is pretty long. It's like, hey, this is what this code is kind of doing. But then I like it to take it a step further and add that. You see I have a comment right above it, right? So I'm like, okay, not only did you give me the definition, but also I'm taking a step further to like type out this is what this means, and I fully understand what I'm doing here type thing. And these are kind of just notes for myself. Longer term, probably going to move this somewhere else. Like you saw earlier, I had it on a README. Maybe this can be a blog post. Maybe not the best idea to have this in here. But when you're learning, having a comment there is just pretty easy. And you can go back to it. Maybe have a dedicated time after, like, oh, let me go through all my notes and kind of like summarize everything, something like that. But yeah, it's great. It kind of incentivizes you to not only read, but like, okay, that's step 1, but what's step 2 type thing. Sometimes you may not want to leverage the chat fully. Like you may not need to switch into the context of like a longer conversation. and invoking it and asking it just inline, Command-I or Control-I, wait, what does this do? And it can provide you a definition there. On the right side, that may work well for you too. It might be just enough, you might have enough knowledge to leverage that as well. It really depends on where you're at, what you're doing. It's not like, oh, the more you use it, the less you're gonna use chat, or the less you use it, the more you're gonna have to use chat. It's nothing like that. It really just depends on what's gonna work for you in that scenario. And I don't necessarily think you're more experienced or less experienced if you have to leverage chat more or less, or you have to leverage a deeper explanation more or less. It's kind of just like what works best for you too here. Another thing I like to do here, and I was talking about knowing.NET, is whenever there's a line that seems kind of familiar to me in a different language, I like to ask. It's like here you can see I'm asking, like, is there anything similar to this in C#.NET? And it tells me, like, yeah, there's actually this that looks similar. And as an example here, you can take it out, and then you kind of like associate things, which I like as well. I think learning things through association, like for example, I know Azure functions very well in Azure, and then whenever I try to learn a new service, I kind of try to learn it in the context of functions, like how can I get it to work there? And that way I'm not learning from scratch from zero. It's kind of association, I really like that. But yeah, recommendation number 4 I have here is to verify suggestions. Obviously we know, it learns off our code, right? And in our, not your private code, but like open, like stuff that's publicly available. So obviously there's gonna be mistakes in there, right? So for example here, I've got a comment, and you can see there that says validate JSON, and it's trying to generate this code for me. But instead you can hit Control Enter, and it'll synthesize a lot more solutions for you, which are on here on the right side. And taking it a step further, and I shared this earlier, you can select all that, all those solutions, and then ask it, okay, well, out of all these suggestions, which one works best for me? And it'll oftentimes tell you this won't work, this will work, this has a mistake in it. And you can continue to ask it, why won't this work? Point out the one that doesn't work. And there's only so many screenshots that I can include here. But yeah, you can see here it says suggestion 4 is the best option. And as long as you can describe what you're looking for, it pretty much will give you a pretty solid solution. As you can see here, what I leveraged here actually ended up working well. And the last recommendation that I have here is to know when to leverage other tools. Like, I don't think you should have loyalty. Yeah, here I'm talking about Copilot, but leverage absolutely anything that you can out there. I know there's like things by AWS. I know Emily mentioning earlier, there's things by, I'm sure, GCP has some stuff. Like, we're developers, we're here, we have a job to do, we have some projects to complete. Like, whatever it is that we can leverage to build that skill set, we should. I don't think we should be tied down to like, oh, Copilot till I die, or like, no, nothing like that. I work at Microsoft, and I'm telling you that don't, like, leverage everything that you can, right? Because these Copilot is not perfect. I shared these screenshots earlier as well, where it was like, I was trying to get it to generate a system prompt, which you would think like like a Copilot would understand what a system prompt is, and it does understand it, it just doesn't generate it for some reason. So I went back, and then also another tip that I didn't write down here is, if you feel like you're spending too much time getting it to do what you want it to do, then maybe just figure out a different way to do it. Like, go back to, like, don't focus too much on crafting the actual, like, perfect prompt, because you're just gonna waste time getting this tool to get what you want it to do instead of coding, which is what you're there to do, kind of thing, right? These tools will get better as you go, of course, and there's, GitHub Universe is right around the corner. I'm sure there's significant improvements and cool things that they want to share. But yeah, it's not your job to like make Copilot perfect or like get it to give you, there's some funny responses out there and some really clever things, but again, our goal is to be more productive developers, and if we're spending too much time trying to get it to do something, it's probably not the most productive use of our time. But then you can leverage other things like I mentioned, Bing, in my case, or ChatGPT, or whatever it is that you want to use. And it actually did generate a system prompt for me, which I actually used. So that was awesome. The key to success with Copilot is simple, short, specific. That's the best way you're going to get. I guess that's the formula to get the best suggestions from Copilot. But then when you think about like simple, short, specific, like you really have to know what you're talking about. You really have to know what you're asking. And it just comes back to like you really have to understand what you're working on, which is great. And it's just kind of a reminder that we're not going to get replaced, because I asked Copilot how to do something in Blazor. Does anyone familiar with Blazor is? Blazor.net? Okay, the .NET devs have my back again. Yeah. And it doesn't know what Blazor is. I asked, do you know what Blazor is? No, I asked, how do I do this in Blazor? It said, I can only respond in programming-related stuff. And I said, okay, do you know what Razor syntax is? And like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, do you know what Blazor.net is? And then, yes, it did understand, which I think is kind of crazy. But yeah, again, it has these silly quirks to it. But simple, short, and specific is what I would recommend here for success there. So in terms of my learning framework, I've built a few things. There are already a list of things that I want to implement in this project for myself. And I'm pretty eager to continue building, continue improving the skills. And so I'm pretty happy with where I'm at now. I definitely have gained a deeper understanding, so I don't feel like I'm on either side of like leveraging too much or not enough type thing. So kind of back to this definition, like a developer is someone who writes code to solve problems. So considering that I've built a couple of projects, written some code, I've developed a deeper understanding, I think I can consider myself like sort of a Python developer now. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much. This is linked with all the code, slides here, and happy to answer any questions. Thank you.